I know we're a few minutes early, so we will wait for the others to join us for a few more minutes. But as we continue this journey to learn more and to empower ourselves about our members and our organization, it's imperative that we understand the Soroptimist International United Nations consultative status. So we've tried to give our delegates today a good idea of what this means, how this relates to our clubs and our unions and federations, and how best we can understand this process from local to global. But what better way for us to unpack this than to have feedback from our representatives at the United Nations. And it is with great pleasure that I introduce this segment today, the SI at the United Nations segment, and we're going to learn about the SI feedback loop. And I am very pleased to welcome the Director of Advocacy for Soroptimist International, Bev Booker, and her team.
Welcome to VoiceOver.
And her team at the United Nations. They are women who have exceptional backgrounds. Their bios are available. I will send that out to you. And I think once we go through all the different UN centers, we're going to leave today with a very different understanding, or even greater understanding of our organization. Bev, I'm not sure how many are on. Bev's on mute.
She has to unmute.
Just to give you some perspective, we've got Bev is in the United States. So is Betty. I think we're waiting for, we have joining us today, Vanessa Treres. We've got Ulla Matsums from Geneva. We've got Christine Pierre, who is the main rep in Vienna. Evelyn Para, she's in Paris. Liliana Moscow is also joining us, and we also have our very own SIAP sister, Mary Moore, who's also joining us today. We are a bit early, Bev, so I think the others are still not on, are they?
No.
Is Bev able to start?
Would you mind starting with your intro, Bev, or
Sure, I will start my intro.
Thank you.
Hello, everybody. I am Beverly Bucher, and I am the current Director of Advocacy for Soroptimist International. This is a special year for us because we had our 100th anniversary, and I know some of you were on the celebration. So I'm going to just start with just a little bit of history and then go into what we do and our advocacy structure. Next slide, please. Well, Soroptimist has been at the United Nations since the beginning. The United Nations was founded in 1945 after World War II. And the purpose was to foster peace and security among nations. At the start, there were 51 countries. Today, there are 193 countries or member states and 2 observer states. 2020 marked the 75th anniversary of the UN, and Soroptimist has been there from the beginning. Soroptimist received consultative status at UNESCO in 1948. In 1950, we received consultative status with ECOSOC, and in 1984, we received Category 1 status, which was then general consultative status. What general consultative status is, there are different levels of status within the UN. Currently, there are over 4,500 organizations that have status and are recognized. However, general consultative status is the highest level that you can achieve. And there are only about 148 organizations that have this status. Next slide, please. As I said, we've been there from the beginning. We attended the World Conferences of Women. We were present at the first conference in Mexico City in 1975. In 1995, we were at the fourth World Conference of Women in Beijing that resulted in the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action. 2020, as I said, marked the 25th anniversary of the Beijing Platform for Action. And though COVID shut down the UN and we were not able to be there in person, our UN reps and members from around the world participated virtually in many of the activities. 2001, we are still in a COVID situation, and many of the UN centers are closed for in-person consultations and meetings. However, our UN reps are present virtually, and they continue to work diligently to be that global voice from women and girls. Next. Seroptimist embarked on a new structure in 2020, and we have divided our work into two areas. Well, more than two areas, but global policy and global impact. What global policy is the work that our UN reps do at the centers, that the UN centers throughout the world. They work with other organizations and to ensure that we challenge member states and that they follow the international treaties. They write statements and they speak up for women and girls at the various meetings. Today, we have a team of 21 UN representatives. And then we also have Federation representatives. So the first part of the global, our global voice is, the first picture, we have Ulla Madsen, who is the Assistant Director of Advocacy, but leads the impact team. And what the impact team does is they work, the impact team works with the federations. There are representatives from all the federations on the team, and they work together on activities to advocate for women and girls, to lobby, and to share the work that the UN reps do throughout the world. As I said, I'm the Director of Advocacy. The next part of the advocacy team is Betty. Betty serves not only as a UN rep, but she works with President Sharon Fisher under the umbrella of global partnerships. What Betty does is she brings partnerships to Seroptimist International and gives us opportunities to increase our visibility with other groups and other organizations. We also have Pat Black and Linda Witong, who are advisors to advocacy. And then, of course, we have our team of 21 UN reps that you will hear about today, and you'll hear about the work they do in the global communities. Next slide. In 2020 to 2021, even though it was a COVID year, we were very active within the United Nations. We had 21 active reps in UN entities. We had 8 UN reps in leadership position, and 3 were chosen as experts for expert group meetings. And that's quite an honor to be chosen to be one of those experts. And you'll hear from Betty, who was one of those experts in poverty. We attended 36 commissions and meetings. We participated and sponsored side events and parallel events, and we wrote and signed 32 written statements, as well as President Sharon was able to deliver many oral statements for various meetings. Next slide. So I know that you want to keep informed and you want to learn more. After you hear from our talented UN reps, you can find all the information you need to become advocates in your own community and to work with your projects. If you visit the Seroptimist International website at www.seroptimist.org, www.seroptimist.org. You can find blogs that are written by our expert reps. You can find many reports. You can learn about the road to equality. And you have reports from the High Level Political Forum, 2020, 2021, and all the resources, statements, and everything you need to become advocates in your own community. Next slide, I think that's it. And then here are our team of representatives. You will be hearing from the center contacts, and although Berta could not attend today, we have the expert from Geneva, Ulla Matson, who has been working with the UN reps there and leading that team. So I thank you for the opportunity for us to present, and we're always available if you have questions or need anything. Please contact us. Thank you.
Thank you, Bev. Our next presenter from our UN team is Vanessa Trias. Is she on?
Yes, she is.
Yes, she is. Vanessa, are you going to be sharing your own screen? You haven't sent through a presentation, so.
Vanessa,
Hi. Yes.
do you have your slides?
I'm using the slide. Bev's slides.
Okay, that's fine. Hi, everyone. Sorry, while we have everyone on the screen, if I could just say welcome, everybody. Thank you so much. Now that we have all our reps that are participating in this session, thank you for joining us. We did start a few minutes early. We took advantage of that time that we had. I really do appreciate it. Thank you, Vanessa. Over to you.
Thank you. Do we have Bev's slides for the UN centers?
No.
Vanessa, I didn't send those because I didn't know you wanted to use them.
Oh,
I can share. If you can let me share my screen, I can bring it up for
It's
Vanessa,
okay.
or do you have it?
Mhm.
Do you have it, Vanessa?
no, I don't have it here with me. I thought we will use that package of slides with all the information for the UN centers. But
Betty,
yeah,
you have permission to share.
Thank you.
I could. Okay, I could start while we put the slides. So hi, everyone. Thank you for having me today. So I'm gonna talk a little bit about the UN reps in New York. So the UN in New York is home for as we know, as the UN General Assembly, the Security Council, and the Economic and Social Council. This makes the UN in New York the center of political hub, and is the place for major commissions like the Commission for Social Development and the Commission on the Status of Women. All major decisions and resolutions are ratified at the UN headquarters in New York. In order to cover as many areas as possible, the UN reps in New York have we follow the commissions, as I said before. We follow the high-level political forum, the General Assembly, the UN 2020. The key areas that we work in New York, and many of the commissions that we follow are regarding to the 2030 agenda and the Sustainable Development Goals and gender equality. So for gender equality, it of course it cross-cut all of many other committees, and the themes that we follow through in the Commission of Social Development and Commission Status of Women and the High-Level Political Forum and the third group at the General Assembly are all related to gender equality. The team, we are formed by Betty Levy. Betty Levy is our main rep in New York, and she basically mentor us and follow all of the committees. We also have Mary Fornella, who is the co-chair for the Commission on Social Development. So she plays a major role on this commission and is very involved with all the tasks that are related to the Commission on Social Development. We also have as a member of our team, Frances Seinode, and she follows the High Level Political Forum and is member of the High Level Political Forum coordination mechanism. And she also works a lot on older women and things related to aging. We also have Barbara Rochman, who follows all the theme regarding to migration and trafficking. We also have Jacqueline Shapiro, who also follows trafficking and the working group on girls. She actually was one of the founders of the working group on girls. And myself, Vanessa Tris, who follows the NGO CSW in New York and the Generation Equality. And with this also related to the Generation Equality, who was followed themes with gender equality and Beijing Platform for Action and cross-cut all of these things through the CSW every year in March. So the way we work as a team, and as you can see, probably New York has more UN reps, and of course, due to the workload and all of the committees that happen in New York, we follow these committees, we write about it, we report back to SI, we help SI to identify the emergent issues in gender equality and for themes on emerging issues for women and girls. And that is reflected in our blogs that you could find in SI's website. It's also reflected in our statements that we deliver for every commission, written statements and oral statements, and of course the statements we have as our organization, as our standing points and what we stand for at Soroptimist International. Thank you. Beth, I'll give it back to you.
Well, actually not back to me, goes back to our host. Thank you.
Thank you, Bev. Our next representative that we'd like to welcome to the session is Ulla. Ulla will be speaking to us, and she is the UN representative for
Geneva.
She's in Geneva, and she holds sustainable development and environment, as well as gender equality, violence against women and girls, very close to her heart. Welcome, Ulla.
Thank you so much, and I'm happy to represent the Geneva team. You know, I am the assistant director of advocacy, and I just have the pleasure of following the team in Geneva for a couple of years now. So the material I will going to show you is what they sent to me. So I will share my screen. Can you see it?
Yes.
Good. Okay. I will start with some information about the Human Rights Council, which is placed in Geneva. I'm sorry, I have to do this. Here we go. It is an intergovernmental body within the United Nations system responsible for strengthening the promotion and protection of human rights around the globe and for addressing situations of human rights violations and make recommendations on them. It has the ability to discuss all thematic human rights issues and situations that require the attention throughout the year. The Council is made up of 47 United Nations member states, which are elected by the UN General Assembly. There are currently 3 representatives in Geneva: Berthe de Vos, who is the center contact, Stacy Kiulik, and Donatella Benjamin. The representatives are involved in the evaluation sessions, human rights committees, such as with the Human Rights Council, the CEDAW, the UPR, the SDGs, and the ILO. The UN Center in Geneva is a very important center because the UN in general has 2/3 of all activities taking place there. It's also the largest center of the UN with plus minus 9,500 staff members. All major UN bodies are located there. The Human Rights Council and its commissioner, Mrs. Bachelet, has been located in Geneva too. There is the ILO, the UNICEF, and the World Health Organization. In addition, all the evaluation mechanisms of the UN are located in Geneva. So the main activities of the UN Center in Geneva is the World Health Organization, the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, the World Trade Organization, the World Intellectual Property, and the International Labour Organization. So, what topics are covered in Geneva? Well, Human Rights Council, the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, control of the obligations of the states in connection with human rights, namely through the charter bodies, and the Universal Periodic Review, the UPR. The UPR is a unique process which involves a review of human rights records of all UN member states. The UPR is a state-driven process under the auspices of the Human Rights Council, which provides the opportunity for each state to declare what actions they have taken to improve the human rights situations in their countries and to fulfill their human rights obligations. As one of the main features of the Council, the UPR is designed to ensure equal treatment for every country when their human rights situation are assessed. The ultimate aim of this mechanism is to improve the human rights situation in all countries and address human rights violations wherever they occur. Currently, no other universal mechanism of this kind exists. Then we have the special procedures, checking the implementation of signed treaties. And then we have a very important convention, namely the Convention of the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, the CEDAW. And we also have the Convention of the Right of the Children. The special agencies is, again, the ILO, Water and Climate, Refugees, and World Health Organization. The Office of the High Commissioner for the Human Rights is a woman, Michelle Bachelet of Chile. She has served as United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights since 2018. She also previously served as president of Chile from 2006 to 10 and 2014 to 18 for the Socialist Party of Chile. She is the first woman to hold a Chilean presidency and the first elected female leader in South America. The agency is responsible for monitoring the respect of human rights in the world. For example, a special session was convened in June 2020 as a result of the riots due of racism and slavery in the United States and in the world, or also the reaction on Afghanistan. This bureau has an audit function and asks the NGO, such as Optimist International, through its representatives to carry out an audit or to report violence. Every year, a special meeting is convened with only the NGOs to discuss the state of play. Then we have the very important convention, the CEDAW. This convention was adopted by the UN member states in 1979 and has now been ratified by 189 of the 193 member states. The United States of America is conspicuously absent. CEDAW is a very important treaty for women because member states have voluntarily agreed to ensure respect, protect, and promote human rights for women in all circumstances in their territory. The input is helping women to improve their daily lives. Legal obligations of the member states. The elimination of all forms of discrimination against women in all areas. Guaranteeing the full development and advancement of women so that they can exercise and enjoy the human rights and fundamental freedoms in the same way as men. Allowing the experts of the CEDAW committee to monitor on the regular basis, plus minus every 4 years, the progress made by the member states. During the public sessions of the committee, which takes place 3 times per year for 2 weeks in Geneva, or 8 member states are invited to provide explanations to the committee on these matters. The experts question the member states on the basis of their findings observed on the spot and incorporated the written and the oral comments of the NGOs into their comments. Member states have the right to an oral defense or in writing if it appears that searches must be made. After each session, recommendations will be made public and also given to the General Assembly of the UN. Member states can be reprimanded and publicly blamed. So it's really a very important convention. The last slide I have is the overview of information to be found in connection with the advocacy of SI and the work of the UN. I will also tell you that you can find much more information of the Human Rights Council in Geneva on their website, but also about the Geneva team that just made their our voice at the UN in 2 parts, and you can find it on the SI website. Thank you.
Very much, Bilal. I now would like to introduce our UN representative in Vienna, Christine Pierre-Valenta. Christine, we'd love to hear from you.
Christine, you must please unmute.
Sorry, I hope I can share my screen. I'm not sure if I can do it.
Yes, you can.
I can. So we'll go on like this. Yes, good afternoon from Vienna. So nice meeting you on this platform. We are currently four reps in Vienna. Martina Gredler, she is second president of Congo and is also attending the Alliance and UNODC. Myself, I'm center contact and vice chair of the NGO committee of CSW Vienna. And I'm also attending and participating in the Committee on Peace and Committee on Aging. Marion Prechtel, the treasurer of the NGO Committee on Sustainable Development. She's also participating in UNIDO, but in fact, and Marcella Sigmund, she is relatively new. In fact, it is like that Marion and me are attending the most of the meetings because, yes, we would need another rep, so in fact. So our areas of work, we are working in 4 committees, and the Committee on Peace, on Aging with monthly meetings. And of course, we have different interesting topics. In particular, we organizing and helping in for special international days, for example, for the IDOP, the International Day of Older Persons, or the Genbanki Nohi Day. It's an Atomic Bomb Awareness Day. We are helping, organizing, inviting people, panel discussion, and so we are involved in these teams. The next, of course, we are a part of the NGO Committee on Sustainable Development and at the NGO Committee on CSW Vienna with monthly meetings. Of course, all the goals are touching the SDGs in special forms. We are taking awareness on international days, participating in conferences and organizing side events. I will come to this part again at the UNIDO, CCPCG and UNODC. So these 4 committees where we belong to are working towards these special congresses or events when member states are in Vienna. So this different, sometimes there are 48 member states and sometimes there are 122 member states by different sessions like the CCPCG, the Commission on Crime Prevention and Criminal Justice, or at the UNODC, the United Nations Office on Drugs and Organized Crime, or the UNIDO, United Nations Industrial Development Organization. And sometimes we are happy to welcome the international president or BEF or somebody else from the higher level of Soroptimist International. So of course, you know, the committees provide a forum for NGOs like Soroptimist International interested in discussing and analyzing the work of the intergovernmental bodies of the United Nations in the field of human rights, sustainability and gender equality. And so in special of focus on sustainable development, of course, environmental factors, human rights and women affairs. So we are making statements, the committee, for example, for Crime Congress in Kyoto. We're organizing side events, so for linking criminal justice and the SDGs, climate change, effects on women and girls, environmental factors as an important trigger for migration, and furthermore. This is the Committee on Sustainable Development. Of course, we are also touching the International Women's Day, or here it is Orange the World, and we are working together very well. We support the activities of UN Women, local and international. We advocate for women's issues with UN member states missions. We follow meetings and disseminate information on the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women. So as Ulla said, CEDAW, and inviting people who are interested for us and giving good speeches. And of course, at panel discussions, we always try to have international speakers in Vienna, often organized by Soroptimist International and with the help of our organization. In particular, we follow the Vienna-based UN commissions and agencies. So, for example, the work of the UN Office on Drugs and Crime, UNODC, the Commission on Crime Prevention and Criminal Justice, which is one of our main sessions, and the activities of the UN Industrial Development Organization, the UNIDO. So we have our statements with us. We're making advocacy with raising awareness at all levels and cooperate with other NGOs. The UNODC, the Commission on Crime Prevention and Criminal Justice, crime prevention is one of our main goals. At our side events, we focus on all forms of gender-based violence against women and girls. So, for example, human trafficking, femicide, domestic violence, smuggling, women in prison, the killing of women and girls, discrimination, physical and mental health of women, the right of equal pay, cybercrime, girls' child early marriage, and furthermore. Of course, the shadow pandemic is also one of our goals because she has increased the situation of violence against women immensely, as you know, of course. So we have a conversation about our focus, our projects, our international connections, our global network. We are very well known to optimists at the UN in Vienna, which is called VIC, the Vienna International Center. We are discussing our goals in relation to the respective current conference and the members of the panel and the representatives of the member states. And we have our business cards and statements ready. We raise our voice. The contact members, what can SI groups do? Bev asked me to focus on this a little bit. The contact members of the local government, contact them. Look at female leaders, invite them to panel discussions about anyone, anything. Invite SMI members of the clubs to join side events, report at local and national SI meetings, and make a short newsletter for the unions and single clubs because most of them, they're thinking, that is busy for the reps, but they are not aware that they also can have a voice for Seroptimists and for women and for girls. Train the Seroptimists in the clubs about the SDGs in connection to our SI goals, inspire clubs to talk about human rights, inspire them to talk about these issues on local level. So we are Seroptimist and the reps were a global voice for women, but each union, single club and Seroptimist member can be a local voice for women. I didn't make it so historical as like Ulla, but it's just a short overview what we are representing in Vienna. All the best. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christine. And for all of us sitting here today, listening to all these acronyms, don't be afraid. As you will see, there are resources that will help us and make us understand it better. But this was just an opportunity that we can share all this information just to let everybody know, all our members and delegates present today, exactly how much of work goes on and how Seroptimists International is actually directly involved in that. Our next UN rep is Evelyn Para, and she is our UNESCO, our SI representative in UNESCO, which is in Paris. Over to you, Evelyn.
Thank you. I can share my screen?
Yes, you can.
Okay.
Yes. I thank all the organizers of this important meeting warmly for giving me the opportunity to speak about Seroptimist International work at UNESCO. For several years now, Seroptimist International has made its voice heard at UNESCO alongside 370 other NGOs to ensure that the voice of civil society is heard. Our three representatives are Rina Duprier, Marie-Christine Grier, and myself, Evelyn Para, as the contact member. There are numerous work topics. They are suited to the name of UNESCO, the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization. These themes deal with lifelong education, gender equality, women and girls empowerment, human rights, fight against all forms of violence, against inequalities and discrimination of any kind. They promote science, artificial intelligence. They deal with climate change and its impact, and with many other subjects. We focus on the Sustainable Development Goals of Agenda 2030, in particular SDG 4, quality education, and SDG 5, gender equality. We also ensure that the ESI priorities, ESI mission and vision are shared with the different sectors of UNESCO, that these priorities become part of the debates, the declarations, and the recommendations, and as much as possible in the policies of UN member states. We do this by participating throughout the year in commissions, seminars, international days, forums, and various NGO working group meetings. So at UNESCO, what topics are we currently working on? In a short time, it will be difficult to explain all the themes to you. I have chosen to name only 3 of them. For the first topic, how to accelerate the progress to SDG 4, quality education, in a post-COVID world. For 25 years, there have been real advances in lifelong education. The global enrollment rate for girls has increased from 73% to 89%, with the most significant improvement seen in sub-Saharan Africa, Central Asia, and especially India. The participation of women in higher education has tripled. Girls' learning outcome is improving faster than boys, but digital technology is creating new gender gaps, and women still make up the bulk of illiterate adults. Let's recall some statistics corresponding to the global challenges that already remained to be met before the COVID-19 pandemic. 258 million children and young people are unschooled. 758 million adults, 2/3 of whom are women, can't read or write. Billions of dollars and millions of teachers are needed. Today, several million children and young people are at risk of dropping out of school, including 11 million girls. This is why, during the COVID crisis, UNESCO mobilized a global coalition for education, a real platform for collaboration and exchange created for support learners, teachers, and decision makers with new digital learning solutions that have enabled distant education to millions of young people. The objective is to ensure pedagogical continuity, inclusion, and equity for all students in order to guarantee this fundamental human right for all, which is the right to education. Today, this coalition brings together 175 partners from the UN family, as well as representatives of NGOs and civil society, universities, and the private sector, who are currently working in 112 countries around 3 central topics: connectivity, gender, and teacher training. The second topic that increasingly feeds our think tank at UNESCO is preparing women for digital future. Today, many countries are convinced that their future economic competitiveness will depend on how quickly they can make the transition to digital and green society. This dynamic should prepare prepare us for the professions of tomorrow, in particular, those related to Industry 4.0 of digital transformation. Women should not miss out on these jobs. Women must not miss the job train of tomorrow. But are we prepared for this professional revolution? One thing is obvious. Women have made great progress in number in the life science professions, biology or medical science, for example. But they still represent low graduates of the higher education in engineering or in artificial intelligence. And when it's necessary, women often have difficulties to access funding. However, it's the fields of STEM, science, digital information technology, engineering, and mathematics that are at the origin of the digital revolution and therefore of many professions of the future. The third topic that I have chosen to present concerns education for global citizenship. The results of a survey entitled The World in 2030, launched by UNESCO, highlighted the thinking of NGOs since last year with one objective, that the programs implemented meet the real needs of citizens around the world for the decade to come. Clear priorities were highlighted in this survey: fighting climate change and biodiversity loss, reducing violence and conflict, fighting discrimination and inequality, achieving equal access to quality education for all. Education in all its facets is an essential solution. Education for sustainable development, education for the promotion of non-violence, cultural tolerance, human rights and gender equality, but also the teaching of critical thinking. UNESCO's response is education for global citizenship, a form of civic learning, especially for young people, which aims to impart the knowledge, skills, values, and attitudes necessary to help promote tolerance, equity, and peace in the world. To conclude, I would like to remind you of UNESCO's motto, part of its constitution for 76 years. Since wars begin in the minds of men and women, it is in the minds of men and women that the defenses of peace must be consulted. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Evelyn. Before we hear from our SI representative in Rome, Liliana Mosca, we would like to play a video for you today.
1 second.
Okay, thank you. Good morning to everyone. And thank you for inviting me to speak about the Roma Center. But in fact, since we are a platform in Rome that was established in 1979 and recognized by the FAO in 1981, we decide to have a platform. The purpose of this group is related to the function and roles of the representatives vis-a-vis to the organization and FAO. So our activities, like of the other NGO, is to be like a sort of sharing information to the headquarters, let's say probably a two-way channel. The group, it's composed of about 12 NGO for specifically working for women. The other are a little bit different. Most of are from the church. They're working with missionaries and so on. So the group meets regularly once a month at the FAO headquarters, and we are, of course, free to develop their own cooperation with FAO in their field of interest. And the Seroptis particularly works for the empowerment of women and girls. I am the only one in Rome. I don't have people working with me. And in this optic, I decided to present a very brief speech on the role of women on food production, that I think probably will be more interesting, and see particularly what FAO is doing for the empowerment of women and girls. And I will start because I presented a video on the International Day of Rural Women of this year, last October 15. The spotlight was rural women cultivating good food for all. And I like the essential role the rural women and girls play in the food system of the world. On average, rural women make up more than 43% of the agricultural labor in developing countries, ranging from 20% in Latin America to 50% or more in Africa and Asia. In Sub-Saharan Africa and Caribbean, they produce up to 80% of basic foodstuff. In Asia, they provide from 50 to 90% of the labor for rice cultivation. And in Southeast Asia and Pacific as well, Latin America, women home gardens represent some of the most complex agricultural systems known. Leaving no one behind is the central transformative promise of the 230 agenda. And it represents the commitment of the United Member States to eradicate poverty in all its forms and discrimination and exclusion, and reduce the inequalities and vulnerabilities that leave people behind and undermine the potential of individual and of humanity as well. The importance of gender equality, women and girls empowerment for sustainable development was acknowledged by the international community through the adoption of gender equality as a standalone goal in the 2030 Agenda, CDG 5. In the case of the rural women, the principle can be declined, leaving no rural women behind. Because the gender gap in food and agriculture remains extensive, despite the Article 14 of CEDAW on the specific problems faced by rural women, from the right to adequate living condition to participation in development planning and access to education, healthcare, transport, and financial service. And also due to the general recommendation number 34 on the rights of rural women, adopted in 2016. The landmark recommendation clarifies state obligation to recognize, protect, and promote the rights of rural women. Improving the lives of rural women is a key to eradicate hunger, food insecurity, and malnutrition. Yet, rural women and girls face many obstacles due to heavy workload and the persistence of a traditional view about women and men's role in society. Rural women often face violence in carrying out their responsibilities, such as collecting water and fuel wood for domestic and agriculture, and sometimes they have to travel longer distance, putting them at high risk of violence. Do we have a response that can help women and girls in rural and remote communities to reduce the gender gap and enhance their livelihoods? Rural women and girls should have equal participation in decision-making in rural institutions, in shaping laws, policy, and programs, the equal access and control over productive resources, service, income, market, and decent employment and protection from gender-based violence, and finally, to be supported in conflict and disaster risk and climate change. In the past year and a half, the progress made in reducing the gender gap have been compromised by COVID-19 pandemic. COVID-19 had a severe and lasting impacts on food security and nutrition, and on the right to food and related human rights, particularly of rural women. The COVID-19 outbreak has further exacerbated the life of women and girls in rural areas, because even if they continue to play a key role in preserving food supply chain in many developing countries, they endure, suffer exploitation and exclusion, and exacerbate inequalities, rendering agricultural women particularly vulnerable to the pandemic. Last but not least, lockdown resulted in increased domestic and care work for women. The trend seen over the last, now I will just say something about South Africa. I thought that was interesting. The trend seen over the past year present a South African rural women that is living longer, is more educated, more mobile, and is opting for fewer children. Progress and improvement can be seen, but there are still tremendous needs to be met to achieve a truly sustainable, equitable development, due to the fact that the official unemployment rate for women is almost at 36.8. To challenge this condition, South Africa women are part of the Rural Women Assembly, a movement that aims to advance a feminist agroecology, challenge agribusiness, dismantle patriarchal structure. To conclude, I will say a few words on the work the FAO is doing for the rural women. FAO, the United Nations Women and World Food Program, is implementing the program accelerating progress towards the economic empowerment of rural women in Ethiopia, Guatemala, Kyrgyzstan, Liberia, Nepal, Niger, and Rwanda. The program has 4 main outcomes. Rural women have improved food and nutrition security. Rural women have increased income to secure their livelihood and create wealth. Rural women have enhance leadership and participation in their communities and the rural institutions, and shaping laws, policy, and programs. A more gender-responsive policy environment is secured for the economic empowerment of rural women. To date, the program has supported over 75,000 rural women and 400,000 households through a set of integrated efforts, with the generous support of the Norwegian Minister of Foreign Affairs and the Swedish International Development Cooperation. FAO engagement is secured also through the Committee of World Food Security with government, agency, civil society, etc. FAO works with the African Union for the gender strategy 2017-2027 with the European Union, that is the largest provider of voluntary contribution to FAO budget. The FAO and NEO project is still on regarding African countries are the strengthening livelihood resilience of a pastoral and agro-pastoral community in South Sudan cross-border area, support to agri-food investment in Malawi, and the agriculture for economic growth and food security to mitigate migration flow from Gambia. Main messages. Gender equality is essential for attaining food security, nutrition, and achieving all sustainable development goals. The agricultural sector is weakening in many countries, also because women don't have equal access to resources and opportunities. Up to 811 million people were undernourished last year. More than half of all these people live in Asia, more than a third million in Africa, and a small proportion in Latin America and Caribbean. But the sharpest rise in hunger was in Africa, where the estimated prevalence of undernourished people at 21% of the population is more than double that in any other region. If we are to end hunger by 2030, we must address the inequalities. And then the gender gap imposes high cost on the agricultural sector, the broader economy and society, as well as on women themselves. Women are critical agents of change in the fight against rural poverty, hunger, and malnutrition. They comprise near to or even more the 43% working in agriculture, and in the last developed countries, 2 in 3 women are employed in farming. If women had the same access as men to productive resources, they could increase yields on their farm significantly, which could in turn reduce the number of hungry people in the world. Thank you. To you, Beth.
Thank you, Liliana. Back to our host.
You have my slides? No? Okay, I'll work without them then.
Well, where is our host? Hello. There we go. Nope, not that one. Not that
Purple.
one. Is it?
Betty, is it this one that I'm sharing now?
It's purple.
Yeah, it's the same one.
The same.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. So I just wanted to do a little clarification before I go into them. And I made the slides, but I'm not really going to read from the slides. I'm going to talk about what's on the slides, and you'll have the slides for later. But I want to give a little clarification. because the way the UN is set up, and I'm realizing because the way we're talking, we haven't given you an overview, and I'm just going to give a very quick. The UN is made up of 6 principal organs: the General Assembly, the Security Council, the Economic and Social Council, the Secretariat, the International Court of Justice, and the Trusteeship Council. 5 of those principal organs are based at the UN headquarters in New York, the home of all 193 countries and 2 observers. All have permanent missions. There's over 35,000 staff at UN. Everything must come back to New York to be ratified, whether it's through the Security Council or the General Assembly. All of the functional commissions, the regional commissions, that all comes under ECOSOC. All of the subsidiary organs, such as the Human Rights Council, come under the General Assembly. We do not work separately. They all come together as a whole. Very much the way Seroptimus, the federations, work separately and come together as a whole. You can go to the next slide. I just wanted to put that forward so people understood there is this structure that brings us together. So while we're a volunteer organization, I must say that those of us who are UN reps, we put in somewhere between 30 to 80 hours a week. It's not a few hours. It's not a little bit of work. It's because it's not that we just attend a meeting or a commission, but we participate in small working groups. We participate on committees. We take on leadership roles. We become experts in areas. So this is a major time commitment that people are willing to make, regardless of what center they're out of. The other thing I want to bring up is that Marie-Christine Martina and I are the last of the old holdovers of people who remember the UN from a time when an individual organization had some influence. That is not the case anymore. Even including the large international organizations such as Amnesty, Oxfam, we all, regardless of what center we're at, we need to be part of coalitions. We need to be working with groups of NGOs to make any influence at all. While we get to still submit statements, quite honestly, it's very rare that a member state ever reads those statements at the global level. By the time those statements come in, the work has long begun to work. So it doesn't have the same influence. It's the work of the coalitions. And that's why SI reps learn to become incredible networkers, because that's the only way we can keep our fingers on the pulse, that we can know what's actually happening, what the opposition is looking to do, where are the controversial topics, what's the change in language. Language is key at the UN. What may be the right word today, tomorrow is totally means something different. President Sharon likes to use the example of gender sensitive. 5 years ago, gender sensitive was seen as very progressive. But today, if you say you're gender sensitive, that just means you're aware, that there's a need to look at gender, but it doesn't mean you're going to do anything. We moved from gender sensitive to gender responsive. But again, that was more of a knee-jerk kind of reaction. Oh, look at this. If we do this, this will happen for women. But again, that's not the language today, because that again was also seen as just being a stopgap. We're now looking for transformative. We need to be gender transformative. Next slide, please. So Seroptimus International UN reps, our advocacy has absolutely nothing to do with, oh, okay, I'm on a different slide from you, but that's okay. this just shows you the kind of work we really focus, regardless of what center, on human rights, on gender equality. At the United Nations, we're really working our hardest to advocate for women and girls in all the diversity, whether it's age, whether it's sexual preference, whether it's disabilities, indigenous. We want to make sure that all women and girls are included. And so we have to stay up to date on what's happening. What are the emerging issues? What is happening in a different location that may impact the rest of the world? Next slide, please. Okay. So as I was starting to say, SI UN reps, we really have, nothing to do with clubs or federations. We really work directly for SI, directly to influence global policy. We try to, through this new structure that Bev described, we try to keep the federations through global impact in the loop, and they try to keep us in the loop. So we have this feedback among ourselves. But our work really, because of the arbitrary split a number of years ago, the UN reps really only work directly with SI. All of us, though, need to see ourselves as the sum of the whole, the collective, because it is only by us working together that Soroptimist will be able to make any kind of impact at all, because individually, voices aren't heard anymore at the UN. The UN has long changed. With the bringing in of the SDGs and Agenda 2030, it really moved to a different type of situation. Next slide, please. So we used to always say, the UN reps, we don't know what's going on in your clubs. We need to know about your projects. That's no longer the case. The UN is not interested in your projects. There are many organizations, I think it was even, or I'm not sure who, but somebody already brought up about all the faith-based organizations that are out there, all the little grassroots. Younger people today are more interested in the grassroots, action-focused kinds of things. So it's not that we don't want to know about your projects. We need to have different kind of information about your projects. Data is what counts, and data at the local level is what counts, data at the national level, and data at the global. We do some absolutely amazing projects, and I don't want to take away one bit from any of those projects, but what we don't do is we don't collect data. Now, I'm not only talking about quantitative, which is important, especially if you're going to a budget department in a government, they want to know numbers, but the qualitative. How do you know what the project you did is actually changing the lives of women? That is so important. I know some clubs or some federations are doing storytelling and whatever, but it's really important to really get into those details and learn that. That's the kind of information that UN reps can use when we're part of coalitions and we're trying to get language into whether it's an outcome document, a treaty, get a convention started. It's by having that detail, saying the impact. If you do this, this will happen, that we can make the influence. I cannot stress this enough, how important it is for us to have that data. Next slide, please. So I know that people are very excited, especially when we came in person, to come to New York for a process like CSW. And between between 5 and 10,000 women used to come every year. But I will tell you that 90% of those women never set foot in an official meeting, never followed the governmental process, the negotiations. They really come to New York to network, to boast about their own work, or to learn from other processes that other organizations have. There is nothing wrong with that, but it's not how you impact global policy. How you impact global policy is by starting at that local level, by going to your national and your regional levels. Because by the time you get to something like CSW or the Commission on Population and Development or crimes or whatever, the governments have already negotiated. They've done consultations at home. They've done, all their work. They're now fighting for specific language, where a period might be. Is it a capital A or a small a? That type of thing. So that's way too late. You really need to start engaging locally, nationally, and regionally. I cannot say that enough. I know I'm a broken record about that, but that's where you can make the change. Because if you can get your government to be forward-thinking and progressive with the language and support what SI stands for, then when they get to the national and global level, it's a little bit easier to fight for some of those things. There's been, over the last 5-6 years, there's been a lot of pushback on language. There's been a lot of pushback. You'd be surprised how last CSW, last CPD, HLPF, they wanted to take out any references to human rights, some of the governments, any reference to gender equality. So that's why it's so important for you to get your national governments to support you. There's been a big pushback on multilateralism, and it's been quite a surprise, with the pandemic, that hasn't been any lessening of that. So again, I just want to keep stressing the importance of coming back to working locally, making sure you have that data to share with your local governments, with your national governments, with your regional governments. Next slide. I think we can pass this one. Yes. So, well, I wanted the last one, but that's okay. I just wanted to say that we do work on all 17 goals, not just 5 and 4, because they are all interconnected to each other. There is no way we can separate them. You cannot have gender equality if you don't have sanitation and water, if you don't have transportation, if we don't have participation. So this is something that all of the UN reps, why we focus on gender equality, we are really looking at all 17 goals, all 169 targets, and hundreds of indicators. Again, that's why it takes so many hours for us to do this. We also are really finding there's been a lot of pushback on having civil society engaged, and the virtual world has made it easier for governments to push us out. And so we really, again, this is something through all the coalitions we work with, we work on making sure that there is CSO participation, civil society participation there, because that's the only way that all women and girls and all their diversity is going to ever achieve equality. We do promote human rights, has been mentioned by every single rep. We look at the CEDAW, the universal peer reviews. CSW follows the implementation of the Beijing Platform for Action, 1325, and other UN documents. But currently, a big issue, and it's something you can work on in South Africa, a big issue for the reps both in Geneva and in New York. They're working on ILO's C-190 resolution, trying to get all member states of ILO, not all members of the UN are part of ILO, but the majority are. I think it's 185 countries at this point, to ratify it. This is about violence in the workplace. This is something that is at the essence of what Seroptimus stands for. So we really need your work, because we as UN reps can't get into that local level. We need you to get your countries on board with ratifying this so that we can eliminate violence in the workplace. We're also working on, as I mentioned, the civil society participation and a convention on older persons. This is really key things that we're working on now. I'm going to end now, but I want to say that really important for you to sign up for the Global Voice, which is on the SI's website. SI does not have the ability to reach out to individual club members. The only way they can do it is if you personally sign up through SI's Global Voice. And I'm thrilled that Mary is going to be following me to speak now, because it is so critical for the South African Federation or region to get active in the African region. That's a very, very strong region in the UN. The Africa group works very strongly together, and Mary's going to really help you see how you can be part of it. And again, thank you for inviting us today. This was really very important. Bye.
Thank you, Betty. And for talk that really does resonate with us, because that's exactly the type of direction that we are all looking for to make our work more relevant and more impactful. I am so proud to present our next, I suppose we say the best for last, no disrespect to all our other beautiful ladies. Our very special SIW friend, Mary Moore, who's here in Nairobi, and she will give an overview of the work done in Nairobi, the effects of climate change on women, and girls, focusing on Africa. Welcome, Mary.
Thank you so much, Saija, and everyone in South Africa. Good afternoon, everyone from Nairobi. I am glad to join you again, and I'm so happy to speak after everyone from the other centers have spoken. And I will just take time to introduce you to the Nairobi Center that I sit in here in Nairobi. The UN Environment Program Center in Nairobi is the headquarters of our environment program, and we are 3 center contacts. I sit here with 2 other Seroptimus sisters, Asha Abdurrahman, who is a very well-known Seroptimist to all of you, and I also have another sister called Beatrice Oluoch, and the 3 of us are able to sit at UNEP and follow up at the discussions that go throughout about environment. Specifically, we are able to have the following themes that we work towards knowing and getting the voices of SI in it: women in rural areas, climate change, water and sanitation, and we also follow up on disaster risk and management, and also education. We recently have gotten our foot in UN Habitat, where we are following up on sustainable cities and issues to do with housing for women and girls. The UN Environment Program is turning 50 years today. It was incepted in 1972 in Stockholm. And I want to tell you that a lot of work has gone on to be able to have nations and communities take actions to alleviate matters to do with climate change and to reduce or mitigate the difficulties and challenges that have come by as a way of preserving today and the future, because our environment is in crisis. Our planet is in crisis. We currently are having three very crucial climate related crises. And the first one is, of course, the climate crisis itself. A lot of changes have occurred, and you know that weather patterns are different. We no longer get enough rains, or we go through very long dry spells of drought. Here in Africa, we have seen a lot of families, and a big famine affect children, women, and even our livestock. We also know that nature and biodiversity are quite being depleted at a very fast rate, and we need to do something to just save our nature, our forests, our natural fauna, our seas, our lakes, our rivers. They are not the way they used to be when we were young, growing up children. Personally, myself, I can attest to that. The same forest that I drew firewood from with my sisters is no longer there in my village. And so whenever I go to my village these days, I see more drought and more severe conditions of living than it was when I was much younger. The other crisis that we have in terms of environment is pollution and waste crisis. Pollution has been done in different ways. We have plastic pollution, we have the greenhouses emissions, and we have everything that is not right that is happening, not to mention the waste and the consumption that occur, and that we, in terms of environment, if we don't check on pollution and waste crises, then we shall not be doing a lot to save our environment. So exactly what happens at the UN Center that we represent, Soroptimist International, the three of us here. I would want to say that there are 3 or 4 aspects that we participate in for us to be able to be on the table as representatives and to follow up on the matters to do with climate change, climate action, environment in regards to women and girls. And this happens through one of the entities is the Committee of the Permanent Representatives, or the CPR. The CPR is it's a committee of all the ministerial representatives from the 193 member states that are accredited to UNEP. And these nations who have seconded their ministers to be part of UNEP are able to have full committee meetings and also subcommittee meetings. And these subcommittee meetings and the annual committee meetings or the full committee meetings of the permanent representatives discuss all issues to do with climate challenges and what nations can do to be able to mitigate climate crisis. At the moment, we know that this CPR was established quite, I think, as part of the UNEP Assembly in 1985, and it has also another aspect of it that is UNEA, or the United Nations Environment Assembly. The current CPR chair and the bureau itself, or the board, is comprised of 5 nations, and they alternate every 2 years. So for us as representatives, it's always very important to see who is the next chair of UNEA, who is the next vice chair for UNEA, and who is the rapporteur for UNEA, so that we can be able to see what directions the next session is going to take. So currently we do have Portugal as the chair, and the vice chair is from Algeria, Her Excellency Selma Malika, and we also have Mexico and Estonia. The rapporteur is based in Pakistan, or rather is from Pakistan, but based here in Nairobi. And in CPR, our participation is to really listen. What are the nation's directions going towards the subject of environment? Sometimes we do have some of our nations not wanting to hear anything to do with women and girls when it comes to environment, and whether girls and women have a role in participating to actually make a difference in climate change. I do remember one of the UNEAs in the past, I think it was in UNEA 4, and the session was ongoing, and the chair then, and together with the women major groups and all the interested groups, we were fighting to have a resolution to promote gender equality and human rights for and empowerment of women and girls in environmental governance. And several regions were really against that. And in the language, like Betty has just talked about, they did not want to see the word women and girls and gender in that particular resolution. But because of lobbying and working closely with the friendlier governments and other civil society organizations, full resolution on gender and environmental governance was actually arrived at. That took more than 2 years to be able to be put onto the table. The other aspect of the UNEP program here in Nairobi is the UNEA itself, and I will quickly touch on how the UNEA component works. This is a structure that comprises again of the permanent representatives who now are seconded again to be at UNEP by their governments. UNEA is the highest level of decision-making organ on environment globally, and it also acts as the catalyst that pushes the decisions that come from the CPR and what the other stakeholders are thinking in one direction, and therefore the assembly really gives us a big opportunity to be able to catalyze and get into action and have the member states really make declarations that will be having the voices of the people, because each of the major groups have an interest, and they try to influence as either civil society or as government entities to have a proper negotiated position on any issue on environment. I would want to say that like Betty says, environment cuts across all the SDGs, but clearly we do have water and sanitation SDG as a clear one. When it comes to cities, it's another clear SDG that we really think about when we are listening about environment, and of course issues to do with SDG 13 on the climate action itself. UNEA, for it to be able to be complete, we have the major group stakeholders forum, which is another aspect for us as the representatives. We do have a space to be able to participate and lobby and influence. The major group stakeholders are 9, and we do have the relevant one that we sit currently in, the women major group. The other 9 major group stakeholders are coordinated by the facilitators from each of the major groups. And we do have an opportunity to have morning briefings, and we share our statements reacting to what the chair of the community, the CPR or the UNEA president has presented on their floor as being negotiated by member states. So we really do a lot of work behind the scenes to look at the ministerial statement that has been put forward, but also to see who else and which voice is saying or agreeing or disagreeing with interests that would affect the groups that each one of us represents. So it's really, I would say, a quite extensive opportunity to read and to consult and to be in very many places, because if a committee is meeting today and you're not present, it will be difficult for you to know what to contribute towards that particular statement when it gets closer to being finalized. So as Soroptimists, I think there is a very important and felt need to have our voices again on environment for the young women Soroptimists. And this can be an opportunity through having a representative on the children and the youth major group. So with time, I think, and with more Soroptimists showing interest to want to participate in UNEA and UNEP, we will designate one young Soroptimist or several of them to actually sit in the children and youth major group for their voices to come out in their own experiences as young women in matters to do with the environment. The major group space also comes with a lot of capacity building. And we do go through a lot of seminars, a lot of trainings, a lot of capacity building processes by UNEP itself, because UNEP has got a civil society division that brings together all the actors or the non-governmental state actors to understand the process and how to engage according to the procedures set by UNEP. Really, some of the rules that are up there is that not all the major groups can, for example, present their the view at the same time. You are 9 major groups, and at some point you have got to negotiate and have a common statement that will be read by one of you from any of the major groups representatives. So you can imagine, from farmers to indigenous people to women to youth to local authorities to researchers and scientists, we have got to really be very keen to be able to have everybody's voice be in that particular statement. So really, the capacity building processes are quite extensive, and they are actually, like, for example, are happening currently, because we are now looking into the second aspect of the 5th UNEA session, which is going to happen early next year. This is a very different kind of UNEA, because the 5th UNEA session was to happen last year when we had the corona pandemic. But because of not being able to convene physically, the assembly agreed to have it in factions. That one was online, and it happened this year in February. And the second aspect of UNEA will happen next year in February here in Nairobi in person. We've learned again that in terms of participation, Betty, as you said, the space for civil society to engage will be much shrink, because only few will be able to participate physically. And we are hoping that since we are here in Nairobi, we will have a good opportunity to even be on the table to negotiate on UNEA 5.2 agenda when the discussion opens next year in February. On your screen, and I think in the Soroptimist International website, we do have a lot of reports that we upload, and there are links to some of the discussions and negotiations that happen before we can say that we have influenced on matters to do with environment for women and girls. I'm quite happy about the South Africa conference and AGM. I want to congratulate you for having your 56th AGM, and seeing it wise that we all join you today as the UN representatives to be compelled by your, your theme, which is quite very strong. Soroptimist in action, reshaping our future. I think you are already looking into how you can manage environment, how you can make a difference as Soroptimist in South Africa and in Africa, so that together we can be able to have an opportunity to actually make a difference on climate change. It's important that we all speak, and we can only speak through our club actions and our club projects, like the previous speakers have said, in that our experiences will grow to influence what is our governments doing at the national level, and our collective national actions will influence the region. And for example, the South African region can share experiences with the Eastern African region, or the West Africa region and the North African region. And that way we will have a voice at the African Union, so that all our recommendations and our issues can be addressed by AU and also by UN, as we know that our governments have this opportunity to influence what the global policy on environment will be like between now and the years to come. So I want to pledge my support to the declaration about your conference, and any opportunity for your advocacy plans that are going to focus on environment. I'll be very happy to share our Nairobi experiences so that we can be able to influence together. Otherwise, thank you so much, Esaija and team, and congratulations for this particular conference and bringing us together to actually talk as representatives to influence on policy at every level. Thank you very much. Back to you. Bev, did you?
Well, I guess I'll say thank you. I'm not the moderator, but thank you everyone for inviting us and letting us come to you and speak about the work at the UN. We are available. You can contact us through the Seroptimus website. And if you send a message, any of the UN reps would be happy to respond to that message, and we can support you in your work. You've heard numerous times, there are a number of resources on the Seroptimus website. Please use them and also sign up for the Seroptimus Lab so you could talk with other Seroptimists about your work inside the lab. Thank you very much. While we're waiting for our host, does anyone have any questions for us?
South Africa, you
Yes,
are muted.
You're muted, Saija.
Oh, I'm so sorry about that. We had to turn the camera around so we could get everybody to say goodbye and hello to you. No one has any questions at this point, but we will definitely take you up on the offer and send through any burning questions that our ladies may have or our clubs may have. And we will encourage the use of more resources. And thank you for being so accessible and for always encouraging us, very young Seroptimists, to learn more and for providing that knowledge to us as well. We really appreciate it, and we do need your guidance and support. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Keep well. Be careful.
Yeah,
Have a
take
nice
care.
weekend. Bye-bye.
Nice to see
Bye.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye, ladies. Have a nice
Thank you for having
long
us.
weekend. Bye-bye.